who thought that diplomacy between galaxies would. The queue was over a sandwich. Jake Marshall, a corporal, had been repeatedly while carrying a firearm. He was grinning and had a nice. The reason why it all began at the big shiny galactic summit for humanity. Debut on the stage of the galaxy, the moment they had been planning for decades. At last, humanity would emerge from behind the atmosphere of Earth and give each extraterrestrial species a handshake in. The summit had gone well in the universe. Enough, Jake, at least until lunch, wasn't present in person, of course, but tasked for protecting one of the towering, hovering ships outside the conference hall as the ambassadors interacted inside. He had captured fragments of what transpired down from his comrades, and all sounded ridiculous, indicating that the Plan A, species that are very thorny with a repute for being really courteous and dangerously perceptive, had taken enormous offense when a member of the human race, the representatives, produced a ham sandwich nobody had considered checking. That animal humans and pigs believed Bear had an incident that was safe enough to consume. A striking likeness to Plarium. By the time of humanity's representatives became aware of the enormous mistake, the plans had already been released. Door having become a naive lunch explode into a global scandal. Word got out, as it always does, but it didn't take a long time for the galaxy as a whole to identify it. They said that people were unpredictable. If a single species could consume what was essentially the royal property of another family, what else could there be? As it turned out, they were able to provide the solution. There was a lot in the weeks that followed. Rumors travel over space more quickly. Aliens said that light may reach further than stories of violent wars throughout Earth's history, and creative brutality as they probed deeper. Discover the darker and more sinister history of humanity. Horrifying, the image expanded, but it wasn't. It was more about a sandwich. Roughly every terror that people have ever experienced, created, and eventually whole species were asking for emergency councils to, limitations and requesting partnerships to, realizing the danger that humans provide. Jake and the squad was positioned on the outskirts of what they have now begun referring to the line as was a fictitious boundary that the coalition of species in the galaxy had attracted across the planet and its immediate regions, stating that people would not be permitted to travel by TR beyond it. Allows for no further inquiry. Boundaries, and most definitely not anymore. Humanitarian summits. Humanity was as far away as regarding the remainder of the galaxy. Confined, they would be enclosed by walls until the coalition came up with a solution for them, and that's where the actual problems were. Jake had first heard a phrase. For a few reasons, people don't thrive in cages. Earth had adhered to the boundary for months, negotiating diplomatically and participating in back-channel talks to reverse the damn damage, but patience eventually ran out. Quicker than anticipated, soldiers now like Jake was in a marching line with Earth's answer was provided in the first. It knew the words would be understood. Firepower was used in the first confrontation, close to the Sirius on a peaceful outpost. Jake's platoon system before sent on a reconnaissance assignment to make sure, uncovered what was intended to be an uninhabited area. When they got there, they discovered a Drax ship fleet hovering. The Drax, in silence, with their green exoskeletons that are tinted and too big. Among the Coalition's bright-eyed, toughest fighters till that time. They have only ever been seen in peace by humans, discussions or keeping watch during negotiations, towering and commanding, but now they were in direct communication with Jake and his squad, the 7-foot-tall Drax leader, stepping with arms like tree trunks. He looked ahead, staring down at Jake. "You people have been warned, like a weight," he said in a gravelly tone. "Retreat. Now, and maybe we'll forget about this." Offense. Jake paused, then lifted an eyebrow. "You believe we'll raise about because you claim that the Drax..." The warrior's gaze tightened. "But you don't recognize that we have seen your kindness. Please don't make us behave like Jake." Smiled. "Oh, we get it, all right. Just unwilling to play nice." Jake indicated that he was done with it. The first blast from their plasma squad. The starry sky was illuminated by firearms, and the Drag was taken by surprise and tripped backward. They yelled a moment later, and voices sounded as the claws raced forward, thundering across the empty space. But they'd undervalued the humanity of their opponents. Were fighters, not only soldiers. Drax used physical force, but people have mastered the art of fighting with robustness of the strategy and an uncertain determination on the verge of insanity. Where Jake's squad was attacked by the Drax, avoided the area where the invaders cut. The people avoid sliding when struck by. May have fired a shot that broke bones. The air crackled following the deliberate shot. Bolts of plasma flew in all directions with energy, directions that illuminate the battlefield. Jake saw Sarge, one of his buddies, battle a Drax warrior who was avoiding its driving his knee after breaking claws. Enters the chest of the beast prior to giving it a last blow to the skull. One. The DRA dropped one by one, each taking a few excellent hits, but in the end, no substitute for ruthlessness and precision in the humans arrived when the dust eventually. Once the humans were situated, they stood among the fallen. Draz's eyes shine and his breath is thick. Jake paused and looked around, seeing the expressions of his team there. There was no regret or hesitancy for a long time, people had been cautiously attempting to adapt to this enormous galactic society, wishing for approval, but they chose to halt at the boundary of the alien space, feigning not to be monsters not completely, at least, but they were finished, following guidelines established by species that observed. They gathered and saw them as inferior humans. Jake could hear his comm buzzing faintly. Device, a command message arrived. Via more succinct and direct. 3 clicks were detected by Coalition forces. He smiled. East, you know what to do. Examining his squad in preparation for the round. The soldiers shuddered as they laughed at the 2 youths. their limbs modifying their equipment. Their veins hummed with adrenaline. They experienced what it was like to taste, released their greatest potential to be unbound, and they had no intention of. Hold on, Jake. This is definitely round 2. With Point as his squad, he murmured. They proceeded as a single, vigilant unit and, slipping through the ragged stones in silence, structures scattered around the planets. Dust from the barren terrain clung on their armor while their helmets were being moved. Adapted to the poor visibility, they realized they were greatly outnumbered. But it appeared to simply encourage them. For the majority, the odds would have. Though they seemed bleak, they were typical. These were the deaths of human warriors. As the aliens referred to them, worlders, sprang from a society that had instructed them to overcome insurmountable obstacles and somehow discover a path as they moved cautiously forward. The eerie bioluminescence of aliens painted the scenery, indicating the soldier silhouettes from the coalition. Jake looked at the gathering in the distance, looking through his visor and seeing each straight, hundreds of alien species. More unusual than the last time he saw a trio of whole rooks, tall, slender, and limbs that were wiry and curved at strange angles. Sensitive pale eyes glinted in the darkness. He saw the smallest movement in the Garrica race's recognizable armor. That was proficient in magnetic technologies. They were completely armored, motion coupled with a metallic hum. And he then had a glimpse of the luminous, spectral shapes of the Frisians. This is Jake's squad's newest muttered member. Corporal Morales, one of the men who took up position beside Jake, seems to be the Jake. The coalition went all out. Nodded while speaking quietly. There. Finally taking us seriously, he tightened. Let's give them a look at his weapon grip. Reason to recall their correctness. Sarge, to be terrified a few paces ahead. He paused and held up the team. Stopped them all, anxious and prepared. Sarge turned to face Jake again, and Jake handed a firm nod that said, "All right, team." Sarge's voice could be heard coming through the communications just above a whisper. "We struck hard. Hit quickly and keep going. There's no need to take. Just enough to make each and every one they reconsider coming here at all." Near to Earth once again, Jake grinned. "So we're not the civilized, remind them. Species, believing us to be the squad." Moved as if shadows were encroaching. Jake's pulse was low as he sneered with the soft crunch of gravel under your feet. Every stride brought them nearer to the coalition soldiers who haven't observed the people moving forward when they. Jake held out his hand when they were within range. They waited while indicating to retain position, viewing the alien at the appropriate time. Patrols switched shifts, and the fans drifted close by, totally oblivious to their shapes. Glistened quite transparently as they then floated across the sand like a. After flipping the switch, Jake dropped his hand, and the people started acting. The first gunfire reverberated across the bolts of plasma penetrating the darkness. Fizzing phantom shapes that shifted and disintegrated under the assault. Jake saw a The Garrick soldier turns and lifts a weapon, but Sarge pushed him away, delivering a well-targeted blast to his. The armor on the chest plate hissed and cracked, incapable of bearing the force of the pandemonium. Using human weapons broke out in the Coalition's camp as troops frantically falling on one another in there. Jake's squad organization efforts were shifted through them like a natural force. Each and every swing and shot of their weaponry designed to prevent the aliens from. They had practiced maneuvers off balance months, yet it was nothing in comparison to the thrilling rush of live conflict. They caused pandemonium here. Coalition force the hull is well organized. Rooks screamed as they surged forward. It sliced through the flailing air arms in an effort to defeat the humans. Jake dodged, rolled, and blasted upward, launched a barrage of plasma blasts that blasted the H-Rooks plummeting to the floor. Morales was a blur next to him, skillfully avoiding a whole Rooks, swiping and delivering a forceful blow that sent the beast through the aliens backward. They were unprepared despite their numbers for this degree of violence. They'd anticipated that people would be harsh, but something primal was in the way. Jake waged a relentless battle with his squad, erratic rush that defied all the Coalition had discovered. Jake noticed a few peering from their data disappear into the night and drift off to reassemble or maybe to request reinforcements, but he was also unable to tell how they'd presented their argument, and they'd made it quite evident. Morales, on your. As a Garrick warrior, Sarge barked, sprang at him, sparking electrical. Morales twisted, dodging from his suit inches from the magnetic field, and fired a shot that broke Sparks' visor on the G. The alien dropped to his knees and flew. Jake gripped his shattered helmet, looked around him, absorbing the corpses of Coalition soldiers lying around, the chaos they caused once they departed. Could hear voices approaching in a panic via the open channels of the Coalition. He didn't hear snippets of other languages comprehend, but might hazard a guess at. It was bewilderment, terror, and desperation. Sarge's voice was just what they had desired. Ripped through his mind, order merely verified an approaching wave larger than. At first glance, they seemed to be. Jake wiped his forehead and regrouped, agreed well, and allowed them to send as many as. We're not done yet, he gestured. For the team to rely on, understanding. They would have to get back together and refuel for. As they progressed with the following wave, Jake sensed a influx of something that wasn't really contentment, yet it's also near to. Humans have long been undervalued and kept seen from a distance as nothing more than a risky curiosity, but this time they were more than that on the battlefield. The Coalition was unable to use them as a force. Hold a wild card that didn't follow the galaxy's efforts to contain them as they hid behind a hill. Jake peered. In the distance, where a flickering line of lights signaled the impending. Immediately, his heart began to race. Morales said that these Coalition kinds, as he caught his breath, they really considered. They may enclose us with a number of. House it with regulations and a little red tape, presently working out for them. Jake laughed. They believed that it wasn't doing very well. They could negotiate with us and reason with us into compliance, but they overlooked one. Morales cocked his head in anticipation. Jake smiled. Humans don't give up. When the reinforcements were needed, they were. Jake could now clearly see the several different forms of Morgar troops, draws, as well as a few unknown. The coalition's glittering numbers had obviously went over and above while throwing all they had ascertained to permanently confine humanity. However, humans were not capable of confinement. Accepting with ease, Jake tightened his hold, looking at his squad as he was on his weapon. In the distance, they read themselves. The aliens started to disperse and form, their armor shining in the dim light. Jake could almost feel their starlight, anxious energy in the manner that they attempted to steal in order to avoid the chaos. The unwavering power of humanity will attack them first, Jake's voice said, serene but brimming with the excitement of, they believe they have us in their sights. Outnumbered, so they have us figured out. He looked out at his siblings and squad, in arms, each wearing a similar display of somber concentration and dim amusement. Let's demonstrate to them how incorrect. As the extraterrestrial troops drew closer, Jake and his group consolidated their configuration. They were once again outnumbered. But it didn't really affect the coalitions. The goal of the plan was to overwhelm force, only it was missing one thing. The human race had in. Jake's eyes strayed over his spade's grit. Each member of the squad is an image of peace. They have waged several battles for readiness, fights together to see humanity at its worst and greatest, and they were now standing atop the personification of Earth's alien soil. Sarge tapped his communicator in defiance. We allowed all troops to occupy the whole place. Please come to us. His voice was firm and full of, with an understated ferocity that calmed the squad. The alien ranks advanced, closing the distance before Jake was able to glimpse the information about their armor, the strain in. His finger lingered over their positions. The trigger is awaiting the opportunity to hit. He could feel the pressure of history at this moment, those standing against a galaxy in which one of them is imprisoned. Not today. And now Jake yelled, his sound piercing the silence as if the squad sprang to life with a blade, releasing a plasma storm and firepower that ripped through the ranks of the aliens. Although the coalition troops were disorganized, swiftly responded, saturating the atmosphere with bolts and explosions that illuminated the darkness. Jake just ducked to the side, staying away from a bolt that would have melted his armor and retaliated with a bullet hitting a graveyard guard in the chest, causing the animal to fall. Chaos broke out in reverse as the humans destroyed the coalition troops, refusing to give up even a single inch of territory. The soldiers from Garrick tried to surround. They are using overwhelming numbers to defeat the people in one coordinated attack, but Jake's squad maneuvered with ease, moving and enveloping one another, changing more quickly than the coalition. Morales took down troops who could respond, with a single, accurate sweep of 2 all rooks. Moments Sarge fired his gun through A. Furians lying with measured ease. The battlefield was filled with sound and roars and furious alien shrieks blended together, with human weapons humming quickly, each side engaged in a frantic battle for. Jake could sense the extraterrestrial in order to survive, factors undermining their original self-assurance, collapsing beneath the intense intensity of the human attack was more than merely to win a fight. You had to send A. The message is that humanity cannot be confined, would not be forced to return to the shadows. The coalition ranks one by one. Alien leaders yelled as they started to thin. Jake didn't grasp the languages. Their voices became more fearful and more troops started to retreat. As they faltered, they dropped their firearms. Jake's away from the relentless humanity. A harsh and dominating voice could be heard. They are pushing the team ahead. Advance, pushing the assault. As the coalition soldiers dispersed, Jake seized, bringing down a running Garrick with only one. Sprang to the rear and saw the aliens. He could see that armor ignited and failed. In their eyes and their agitated gestures, the troops of the coalition had lost their will to battle. They were prepared for this, had not readied themselves for the raw, the human willpower that propelled forward. And then it was suddenly over the few aliens that remained. They ran away into. Their retreat was accelerated by the darkness. Jake's squad's jubilant yells. The humans brought their guns down, breathing heavily yet smiling with the excitement of triumph hovering over them like a. Sarge wiped a dusty smear with his blanket. It seems from his face that he is a gentleman. Morales provided the galaxy with its response, laughed and put his weapon in his holster, thinking that Jake, they'll finally get the message. Looked at the coalition receding. Makes him seem fierce. Yes, they got. They wanted us to get the message. Remain restrained in order to fit inside their lovely, tidy compartments, but people don't operate like that. They assembled their equipment and got going, with the exhausted assurance of warriors who had overcome the obstacles and prevailed in the conflict was ended, but it had barely started. Humanity had spoken with a galaxy with reverberating effects for generations. They were there to state that nobody, not even the council, would never form a coalition. Put them in a cage once again.